for the National War of the Arrow Conference of Indiana University. I had recently retired as Director of Intelligence Agency. And as I began to speak, a wise guy airman, way up in the cheap seats in the balcony, yelled out, "Who killed President Kennedy?" And I slowly pointed up to the area where I heard his voice, and I said, "I know who you are, and I know where you live." Now, of course, I could have answered his question. But then I would have had to, you know. For those of you who question the appropriateness of a former CIA director and defense secretary leading the Boy Scouts of America, let me remind you that Lord Baden-Powell was both a soldier and a spy. He was a lieutenant general in the British Army, and he was a pioneer in the use of aerial reconnaissance. And as he would later write, and I quote, "For anyone tired of life, the thrilling life of a spy should be the very finest recuperator." I've been fortunate to receive a number of awards and honors over the years, but none have meant more to me to this day than becoming an Eagle Scout and being recognized with the visual honor of the Order of the Arrow. My memories of scouting and of OA are vivid. After all these years, I remember as a kid in Kansas being taught by my scoutmaster how to cook in winter on a fire of dried cow chips, imparting a distinctive flavor to already nearly inedible food. Or serving on our council's pioneer camp in Colorado, a camp where the staff ate with patrols. The memory and taste of that food lingers still. Or when I and another airman were assigned by our OA Lodge in Kansas to publish a Kansas camping guide. And we bought all the paper before we wrote word. 116,000 sheets of paper, all delivered to my parents' dining room. Or when I was an assistant scoutmaster in college in Williamsburg, Virginia, we took a canoe trip. We took a canoe trip down the Chickahominy River, roaring downstream at full speed, and very nearly ramming a very bright dead cow floating in the river. It would have been an explosive experience. I remember my Order of the Arrow ordeal on a blazing hot July day in Kansas, and my vigil experience bitterly cold January night on the plains. As I sorted through an old box of scouting and OA stuff before coming here, I found my original vigil certificate with my Indian name, Hylas Hutso, which translates as crazy medicine. A number of American presidents and other leaders here at home and abroad I worked with in the decades to come would, I'm sure, have found that entirely appropriate. I come here this evening not to talk to you about spies and satellites, of stealing secrets, running covert wars as CIA director, or big wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as Secretary of Defense, or of heroes like our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. I'm not here tonight to entertain you. Rather, I want to speak to you in all seriousness about the world, the future, and the role you must play in it. For as the conference theme states, it starts with us, meaning you. I speak to you this evening as a leader from one generation to the leaders of the next, young leaders on whom much will depend. The 20th century began in 1900, just a few years before Scouting and the Order of the Arrow were founded, a century that opened full of extraordinary hope, optimism, and promise. A time long ago when governments and peoples believed that they had become too civilized to make war on one another again. That bright optimism was quenched by the bloodiest century of human history. Perhaps 200 million lives lost through war, revolution, and oppression. In this still new century, the 21st century, your century, we see a world transformed. A world where its staggering cost in lives and treasure, all the ancient empires have disappeared. Where through 2 world wars and a bitter Cold War, through sacrifices beyond measure, the despotisms of Imperial Germany, Imperial Japan, and the totalitarianisms of Nazism and Soviet communism were defeated. Whereas never before, people are demanding peace, democracy, and an economic system that works. Over the last quarter of a century, we've seen the Soviet Union collapse, the Cold War end, and our victory, Eastern Europe liberated and Germany reunified, and democracy advancing in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And yet with all the change and all the promise, the world we see today is in many ways more turbulent, more unstable, more violent than the world we left behind us years ago. This is the world you will inherit. The Middle East, from Tunisia to Pakistan, is in flames. War consumes Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Violent Islamic extremists such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda recruit not just in the Middle East, but here in the United States and in Europe. And they seek to carry out attacks here and there. Iran foments instability in the region as it pursues a nuclear weapons capability, and religious conflict and persecution abounds. Russia has seized territory beyond its borders by force, and Vladimir Putin threatens the use of nuclear weapons in terms not heard since the darkest days of the Cold War. China's resurgent, challenging U.S. military dominance in the Western Pacific even as it steals our technology. Russia, China, North Korea, and others launch cyber attacks against American companies and against the American government. And tragically, many of these phenomena have a counterpart in our own country. Ethnic and racial conflict, terrorist attacks by Americans against Americans, governments seemingly unable to cope with the challenges that face society, extremism of every kind finding voice in violence. But there is another reality. For the first time in human history, people all over the world are seeking political freedom and economic opportunity. Through the internet and other modern technologies, the freedom to communicate, to share ideas is open to all. But to realize the opportunities created by political change and technological development, to address the challenges to peace and preserving freedom, we Americans must abandon the dream that as individuals and as a nation, we can put down the burdens and responsibilities of leadership at home and abroad. In a world of revolutionary change, of unprecedented hope side by side with instability and violence, future of the world itself